Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you? Another live lesson. I'm not sure if you are in the United States, but if you are, the only news that is being shown is about the election. So I thought if you are learning American English and you are following the American news, then we should talk about elections in English. So in today's English lesson, I am going to describe 25 different ways you can talk about the elections in the United States. And they will be for American elections. Other countries might do it differently. We are going to focus on the United States here. The first one we have ballot. Ballot. For each of these topics, I will have a sentence and I will have a definition for you. So the first one, ballot. It's paper with a list of candidates or issues to vote on. I marked my choices on the ballot and put them in the box. So in the picture, you will see that piece of paper is called the ballot, and they are putting it into the ballot box. Now, each state is different when it comes to elections. So, my state, I live in the state of Maine, it is different from California or Florida or New York. And we still have paper ballots. You have to use a very thick black pen, which they give you, and then you will mark in your ballot. It's a phrasal verb we might use, or you might use fill in. A lot of times it's a circle. And so you take that black marker and fill in the circle for candidate. We will talk about candidate in just a second. Or you could be voting on the school budget. My town just had an election or a referendum, we might call it when people aren't involved, about the school budget. So more money had to go to the school and the citizens had to vote. Should we increase the budget? Should we give more money to the school or should we not? How about this one? I've mentioned this already. Candidate. It's always a person. Candidate. You may be familiar with the American presidential election. Presidential. That is the adjective we would use to describe an election to try and elect a president. Election is the noun. We are having an election. We are trying to elect our next president. Elect is the verb. So the candidate, what is that? It's a person trying to be elected. Each candidate gave a speech at the town hall. The leader of a town or a city in the United States is a mayor. So if somebody is running for mayor, that's the verb we use. President Biden is running for president. President Trump is running for president. If a candidate is running for mayor, they may give a speech at town hall. And town hall is like where the government of the city takes place. Campaign is the next one. You will hear this word a lot. Both President Biden and former President Trump are campaigning right now. This is another word in English that can be a noun or it can be a verb. Let's talk about the noun first. The campaign. What is it? Activities to get people to vote for a candidate. So last week, when President Trump was shot, he was campaigning. He was holding a rally I think we did rally last week. He was holding a rally to try to get people fired up to vote for him. That is an English phrasal verb we can use to mean like make them excited. President Trump was holding a rally to fire up people to get them to vote for him. So, what is a campaign? Activities to get people to vote for a candidate. The campaign volunteers knocked on doors to promote their candidate. That happens a lot in my neighborhood around this time of year. Volunteers. That might be a new word for you. A volunteer is someone who gives their time for something and they don't get paid. So you might have campaign volunteers. These are people who really like the candidate. They may say, I am going to work for free. I am going to try to get other people to vote for you. So who knows? Maybe today I might have somebody knock on my door and say, hey, have you heard about President Biden and what he wants to do for the next 4 years? Or, hey, former President Trump, let me tell you about them and why you should vote for them. So, a campaign, it's all those things that candidates do to try to get elected. It can be a noun. So, they are running a campaign right now, or they are campaigning door to door, trying to get votes. Okay. This is a little tricky. Primary elections. When you think primary, think first. I will focus on presidential elections today because that is in the news. But we have primary elections and we have the general election. So in the spring, each state held a primary election. And let's talk about what that is. And it's an election to choose a party's candidate. Let me say that again in clearer English. We will talk about political parties a little later, and we'll talk about what third parties are. But in the United States, we have two major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. A couple years ago, I did an English lesson on what is the difference. It's been doing pretty well. People are being shown that and they are watching it. So if you want to search American English with Brent, American English with this guy, and look for Republicans and Democrats, you should find it. So Joe Biden might be. Right now, he is the pick for the Democrats. And President Trump is definitely the pick for the Republicans. In the spring, each state held an election. The Democrats chose their candidate, and the Republicans chose their candidate. Now, since spring, I probably won't get into this too much, but the Democrats are having second thoughts. So they are not sure they made the right decision, at least some of them. But last week, the Republicans had a convention. That's not one of our terms, where Republicans get together and they say, yes, we like our candidate. So in the primaries, Biden was elected for the Democrats, Trump was elected for the Republicans. And it usually happens in the spring. We elect our president in November. Primary elections. I will read it one more time. It's an election to choose a party's candidate. Here's a sentence to help you understand that term. The primary election decides who will represent the party in the main election. Now, notice the way Maine is spelled Main. I live in the state of Maine. It's Maine, Maine. And then in November, in the main election or the general election, citizens will vote. They will either vote for President Biden for another 4 years, or they will vote for President Trump for another 4 years. This term, you will hear this quite a bit when watching the news right now. The incumbent. Incumbent. I think we only use this term when talking about elections. What is the incumbent? It's the current office holder who is running again. By this definition, President Biden is the incumbent. He has the job before the election, and he's trying to get the job again after the election. The incumbent. President Biden is the incumbent president. Here's a sentence. The incumbent mayor has a strong chance of winning again. We can use this for governors. We can use this for presidents. We can use this for mayors. All right, earlier, I talked about ballots. Now we need to talk about polling place. This is the place where citizens will cast their vote. That's the verb we use, cast. I need to do an entire English lesson on that word cast. You can use it with fishing. You can use it when people get injured. But a polling place, let's look at the definition. It's a place where people go to vote. It's a place where people will cast their vote. So it's an actual place. A lot of times it's a school, it may be a church. Yeah, mostly schools and churches become polling places on election day. My polling place is at the local elementary school where I used to work. I used to work at a middle school. Last year, I was working at a middle school. And on election day, I had to park in a different place because my school became a polling place. Our gymnasium turned into a place where people could vote. Well, maybe they don't like the lines. A lot of times you have to wait in a line before you can vote. It can get pretty busy before people go to work or after people get out of work. So, what is an absentee ballot? We talked about ballot already. That's what you fill in to pick who you want to become president or mayor. Absentee ballot. It's a ballot for someone who cannot vote in person, or maybe they don't want to. You fill this in before and you mail it. Absentee voting. Each state is a little different. Sometimes you need to get in your absentee ballot a week before the election. So it's a little different for each state. I have never voted by absentee. And if you look at that first part of the word absent, it means not there. So in the morning, when I look at my classroom and I look at my students, some of them might be absent, which means they're not there. If they're present, they are there. If they're absent, they are not there. And here's the sentence for absentee ballot. I mailed in my absentee ballot last week. Yeah. So I think I will go to my polling place, which is an elementary school in my town, in my part of the town, and I will cast my vote there. But sometimes people who are serving in the military. They may be in a different country, but they still want to vote in our elections. They can vote by absentee ballot. Electoral college. All right. Let me take a drink of water. Okay. The electoral college. This is only used when we vote for president and vice president. So let's look at the formal definition. It's a group of people who formally elect the president and vice president. Now, I asked AI to draw a picture for us, and they did not do a good job. But at least you can see a map of the United States. So, each state, depending on how many people live in that state, will get a vote in the Electoral College. My state is small, so we get 4 electoral votes. California is our biggest state. I think they get 54 electoral votes. So, whichever candidate gets the most votes in that state, the candidate will get all of those electoral college votes. So, President Biden is going to win California. There is no question about it. It's a blue state. They always vote Democratic. President Biden will get all 54 electoral votes from California. Maine and Nebraska are the only 2 states that could split their electoral college votes. I think in the last election, President Biden got 3 of our 4 votes, and President Trump got 1 of our 4 votes. You need 270 electoral college votes to win the presidency. I hope I did a good job explaining that. There are a lot of Americans who don't know how the electoral college works. It's very confusing. You might also hear something called the popular vote. And that means whoever gets the most votes from all over the country. So, like back in 2016, if you remember somebody called Hillary Clinton, she won the popular vote. She got more votes than President Trump. But we don't elect our president by the popular vote, it's by electoral college. If you have questions about that, let me know in the chat if you are watching live. All right, the next one we have is debate. This became a very famous term a couple weeks ago. What is a debate? It's a formal discussion, or it should be a formal discussion between candidates. So there are often rules about who can speak, when they can speak, how long they have to speak. And to be honest, the one debate that President Trump and President Biden had a couple weeks ago, the rules were followed because they turned off the candidates' microphones. But usually, the candidates will talk about what they are going to do when they become president, how they will make the country better. But most of the time, in that last debate, the candidates talked about how bad the other person was. Here's a sentence with debate. The debate between the candidates was on TV. The debate between candidates was on TV. And I think since 1960, when President Kennedy and future President Nixon debated, all presidential debates have been on television. All right, the next one, voter registration. Big word there, registration. We'll also talk about register, which is the verb. What is voter registration? The process of signing up to vote. Now, I am a registered voter. I think I had to go to City Hall or Town Hall. That's the place of my city's government. And I had to fill out a form to register to vote. And now I can vote. It's different in every state. I believe my state of Maine is the only state where you can register to vote on the day of the election. Most states, you have to do it before, maybe like a month before. My daughter, she just turned 18 in February. She has to register to vote if she wants to vote in November. I already asked her. She said she is going to do that at her college. They have a day where they register everyone to vote at her college. So, different for each state. What about polls? Okay, earlier we talked about polling place. This is just a little different. Poll. What is it? You can take a poll. I think I've done it on YouTube before. What is a poll? It's a survey of people's opinions. So you ask a question to get an idea of how people think. And guess what? The Democratic Party right now is taking a lot of polls. They are wondering, can President Biden beat President Trump in November? You ask people what they think. That is what a poll is. The latest polls show a close race between the candidates. You can see in the picture, people are raising their hands. So this is happening in person. Like, hey, who do you want to be president? Show me some hands if you think President Trump should be president again. Show me some hands if you think President Biden should be president. That would be a poll. I didn't want to do a poll here on YouTube. It might get too many people. That's two things I don't like talking about on YouTube. Just too many fights, right? People are very passionate. Religion and politics. I don't mind discussing it. Like, I'm hoping right now, nobody knows who I'm going to vote for in November. We're just talking about facts. So, poll. You can take a poll. I think that's the verb we would use most of the time. Hey, I need to take a poll. How many people want grilled cheese for lunch? Okay, this was a big topic earlier this week. Running mate. Running mate. You will hear that only with presidential elections. You will only hear that for president. What is a running mate? A candidate for the second important position: president, vice president. So President Trump needed to pick a running mate. Last week, the Republicans had their national convention. I know these are big words, but a national convention is when a lot of Republicans get together. That's the Republican National Convention. In about a month, all of the Democrats will get together and they will have their convention where they pick their candidate who won in the primaries. I hope that makes sense. And during the convention, the president or the candidate for president will pick their running mate. And last week, President Trump picked a guy named J.D. Vance to be his running mate. So you vote for both president and vice president at the same time. Like, a person cannot go to a polling place and vote for President Trump to be president and Vice President Kamala Harris. Can't do it. They run on a ticket, they run together. So here is a sentence. The presidential candidate announced his running mate yesterday.